totally slipped in 4th gear.
We learned that monster clutches, rated at 700 foot-pounds of torque, can't handle all the stinky beans that Tater's gonna throw down. Well, I got the old monster clutch out, and I'd say she's a little smoked. Yeah. So, here's the new one. Ooh. So as you can see, it is a twin disc. Now it looks like there's less surface area on here than there is on here, but being a twin disc, it actually has way more surface area than this one. And it's not a sprung hub like this. So these little springs in here make it a little more streetable, easier to drive on the street. This one, no springs. But these are supposed to still be pretty nice for driving on the street and hold all the beans on the strip. So I got the old pilot bearing out, and all those needle bearings were already out of it before I pulled it. So got a new one of those to go in. I'm about to make a little installation tool to tap this guy in straight. And once we get this in, we can get the flywheel on and install the clutch and get it all aligned. I got the back of the motor cleaned up pretty well, cleaned out where the pilot bearing is going to sit. And what I want to do before I put anything back together is clean up this edge on the back of the motor. And a little bit of grime and some rust and stuff. So I got this fancy little carbide scraper. So I'm just going to hit this with this guy, get her cleaned up, and then we'll start installing some stuff. So what we want to do with our pilot is get it nice and flush to this inside surface here, and we want to make sure she goes in straight. Perfect. Alright, so now we got our pilot bearing installed. I'm going to install the flywheel. This Tilton clutch came with some nice ARP bolts with 12-point heads. It's like a 19mm, I believe. So the kit comes with instructions, but Tilton's so handy that they also gave you your torque specs right inside the packet of bolts, so you can't really screw it up. So ours is the LS, LSA, LSX, LT1, all the same flywheel for all these applications. We're going to torque it to 85 foot-pounds. And it says to apply medium strength thread locker, which Loctite 243, the blue stuff, is what we need. And then it also says to put some ARP grease under the heads of the bolts so that you ensure that you get the proper torque. If you don't have anything lubricating the underside of that, you could get an incorrect torque value because there's too much friction between the head and the flywheel itself. So luckily I had some of that. It didn't come with it, but I had some left over from the head stud kit that I put in a while back. Just gonna put one in to hold it on, and then I'm gonna grease and thread lock the other ones. Get those in, then I'll take this back out and do the same. So to keep the engine from turning while I'm trying to torque down these flywheel bolts, I just got a breaker bar on here, and then I have it resting up against the frame so that when I go to torque it down, this will hit the frame and stop the engine from turning over. All right, it doesn't say to do this, but I'm gonna go to 70 foot-pounds and then go back and do them all to 85. And you got a little brake cleaner, nice lint-free rag. Just gonna wipe down this surface really nice. We want it to be really clean. Make sure there's nothing in here that's gonna get into the clutch, cause it to possibly slip or something like that. All right, now for the twin disc clutch. So the inner disc came aligned from the factory, but it actually slipped a little bit during shipping. So I just tried to get that aligned by eye the best I could, and we'll align it the rest of the way as we're putting it on here. So I'm just getting a couple bolts started on here. I'm not tightening them at all. And then I'm gonna get the discs aligned so that my pin goes in and out of the pilot bearing very easily. So we're gonna take our time, get all the bolts in, just finger tight pretty much, and then once this is aligned, we'll do a quarter turn at a time in a star pattern and get all these tightened down and then torque them to 35 foot-pounds. All right, got everything torqued down, made sure it was perfectly aligned, and what you want to do is make sure you can turn this thing in a couple different directions. I usually like to go at 1/8 of a turn or 1/4 of a turn at a time. Just keep going around, make sure that thing is perfectly lined up in all directions. Should be barely any resistance. So I think we're good. I'm gonna get the bell housing on. Okay, so I'm still waiting on my release bearing. So I'm kind of at a standstill. And I figured in the meantime, I'm going to rebuild my transmission bracket. So I made this before I had a CNC plasma blaster. And it's just, I mean, it was functional, but it's kind of embarrassing to look at. It worked when I was on lower horsepower, but now I just feel like I need something beefier. So I decided to go to Beef Factor 9000. So this is much stronger, way more reinforced, and it fits in there much nicer. Rather than having to kind of push and pull to get bolts to line up, now they just line up, and it's gonna work great. So, how about that? Release bearing finally came in. I purchased a Ram release bearing. I was going to get a Tilton to match the clutch, but that wouldn't have been here for like a month. To do this properly, you want to make sure that you have the face of this the correct distance away from the fingers of the clutch. So you basically measure from the bell housing surface to this surface, and then you measure from the mating bell housing surface to the fingers of the clutch, and then you want to have basically a distance from the fingers to that fully depressed release bearing surface of, with the twin disc, you want to have it between 0.125 and 0.2 inches. To get that, they come with these shims, and basically all of the shims that came in the kit I needed to use, but it got me to right where I wanted to be. I think it's 0.186 is the distance this should be fully depressed the way it is right now, distance from the fingers of the clutch. So now I'm going to get this thing put in there, look up through my little view hole here and make sure that I do have that gap that I was looking for, and then we can bleed the clutch and start giving this thing the beans. Okay, got the trans back in, made it up to the bell housing, and you got to take your time and make sure that you get it leveled out properly and raised up to the perfect level so that it just slides in without any major resistance, because you don't want to screw up that brand new pilot bearing you put in. when I look up in here, you can see that the surface of that release bearing definitely has at least 1/8 of an inch of gap. So we're good. I'm ready to bolt this thing up, torque it down, and then reconnect the drive shaft. All right, we got everything torqued back together. I got Beefy 9000 installed. Got her painted up the other day too. I think she looks pretty sexy, and nobody will ever see it. Got my drive shaft back installed, everything torqued down, routed my lines, so I have my feed and my bleed line, and now I have the bleeder up top, so it's way easier to bleed. So, gonna button up a few more things, and this thing's gonna be ready to rip. See how she holds up. This thing definitely grabs way harder than the monster clutch. Feels a lot quicker too. Definitely, maybe that was because of the pilot bearing causing, I don't know, extra friction or something, but it definitely feels quicker. Bean time. Second gear stab here. Yeah, might need to put a little bit smaller of a spring in the wastegate. It spins in first, second, third, and fourth. Might be a little too spicy for the street. Clutch feels awesome. This thing holds like a monster, well, not like a monster, it holds like a Tilton Twin Disc. This clutch is an animal. We're definitely ready for the strip. Feels great too, it's smooth. The clutch feel isn't too strong. I mean, not that I'm a baby or something. I'm not a baby, I'm a man. A man with a twin disc. Yeah, I think she's good.